Okay, good. I'm going to hand that over to you now, Elise. Lovely to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, hello, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me. I hope you can. I can see there's 10 people watching, so thank you very much for tuning in, really. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me before we start. So my name is Elise. I'm a photographer and I specialize in beauty, but I also do a little bit of fashion and some portraiture. But beauty is my main thing. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with my work. You can have a little wander on my Instagram or on my website. And yeah, so basically I started taking pictures a very long time ago. I started my career, I didn't study photography. So I was kind of projected into this by pure luck and I guess determination. I just arrived in the country. I didn't speak a word of English. I was a waitress like many foreigners coming into the UK. And then things happened in my life and I decided to launch myself in photography. So I got myself a job in a photographic studio and I got lucky enough that I ended up working with a fantastic team of people at a studio that doesn't exist anymore called James English Studios. They were on Kingsland Road in Shoreditch. And that was wonderful. It was just a world I had no idea existed. They rented a studio to the most incredible photographer at the time. I'm talking 25 years ago. Most amazing photographers. We had the like of La Chapelle, de Marchelier, Martin Marcus, to name just a few, David Sims. You know, we had some incredible photographers. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me. I just realized that this is incredible. Those people are not only getting the most amazing jobs, but they're so passionate about it and they absolutely adore what they're doing. And I just thought, this is it for me. This is exactly what I want to do. So I worked in the studio for about 3 years. The usual things, you know, when you work in a studio, tea, coffee, making sure everyone is happy and well looked after. And after about 3 years, I decided to go they all went.
Elise, one thing, because it's so amazing you're actually mentioning this. If I could just quickly hone in, one of the biggest or one of the best tips, I would say, if someone really wants to assist one of those really big photographers, I would really recommend, because obviously, like, it's really difficult to get in touch with them. I mean, do you call Nick Knight? Yeah, I mean, you can never talk to Nick Knight anyway. You can only talk to his assistant, maybe, if you manage to get his number somehow.
Yeah.
And to position yourself and in rental studios where the really big guys actually are coming in, so that you're really like in the proximity or in the gravitational field of those really big names. And then to befriend those assistants, basically, because again, usually it would be really difficult to become or to kind of get in touch, let's say, like with those really big names. But to get in touch or to befriend, if we can say that, their assistants, because when they leave, the first assistant leaves, then it's them who's going to find another first assistant. And if you've been working maybe as a second or third assistant for them, then you're first in line, basically. No? I think that's really interesting you mentioned that.
That's exactly how it goes. I think, you know, working in a studio was perfect for me because you do get to meet the assistant. And you're right, you don't get to speak to the photographers very often. You know, it's a busy time for them. They are solicited by everyone, whether it's the ad agency, the hair, the makeup, the styling, the models, you know, everyone is on top of the photographer. So you don't really get to speak to them as a studio assistant, but you get to know the assistant because you interact with them. And this is really the startup of any career, I feel. It's befriending those people and make them know that you are accessible and that you are willing to work. And when I started as an assistant, this is exactly what I did. I contacted those guys. I contacted the people that, you know, were nice to me and just said, do you know what, I'm going on my own. I'm looking for some freelance work. If you've got anything going, just get in touch. And it felt like there's a lot of rejection, you know, a lot. you have to be prepared for that. You know, there's out of 100 emails you send, there might be one person that's going to respond, but that's kind of all you need really to kind of step in. But the rejection is something that it's a great learning curve, because the rejection will follow you throughout your whole career. You have to get used to it. You have to bite the bullet and just say, okay, well, this is not just about me. It's about the circumstances or the timing, or, you know, a lot of different things. But this is exactly what happened. When I went on my own, I contacted all those people and just said, this is it. I feel like I'm ready. If you've got anything, just let me know. And then, you know, the calls started coming, just a second assistant and just be on set. We just need someone to be there, make sure things are okay, make sure like things are tidy. And at first it's quite, you know, it's not frustrating because you're still on the learning curve, but that's why you have to keep going. You have to understand that this is going to be the whole years that you're going to be assisting. You are there to learn. You're not there to make any important decision, essentially at first, but you're there to pick up things from other assistants and eventually the photographers. But I got really lucky. I got picked up by a few big names and I started assisting, and then I think word of mouth just starts going, and if you do a good job, then people start talking, and then you get referrals, and then you get, oh, my friend has got this job going, but he can't do it because he's already booked. You know, are you available? And then slowly but surely you build up this kind of list of people you're working with, and if they like you, they'll book you again. I mean, I know I'm very faithful to my assistant. My assistant's been with me for 9 years. You know, so it's a relationship you're building with your assistant. And I think that's the most important thing. It's you are building something that will follow you throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout how many jobs you're doing, because you rely on your assistant. And that's a very important thing. People kind of forget your assistant is your right hand. It's not just someone that is picking up the gear or helping you do something. It is literally your right hand, especially now in the days of digital. You know, it's very important that we have people we can rely on, because we don't always have the time to double check everything. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so this is what I did. So I was an assistant for a good 8 years. And then makeup artist asked me to do a story for a magazine she was beauty editor of. And so I've got this magazine I'm working with. Do you want to do a beauty story with me? I'm like, oh, I'm not too sure. I didn't really think about beauty. I really wanted to do a fashion. You know, I was, you know, dazzled by the fashion world. I wanted the big, expensive frock and the most beautiful model and the hair and makeup. And I wanted, you know, the big fashion shoot. And she kind of pushed me into this. So we did that beauty story. It was all about close-ups, and it was all about very different style of makeup. And the magazine loved it. So they gave me 12 pages and the cover. So it was my first beauty stories, and I got it published, and then I got the cover. So that was just like crazy for me. It was just like, oh my God, this is really happening. I mean, I had been working on my portfolio for a long time already. Throughout my assisting years, I was constantly testing. But this was kind of a big deal. And completely out of the blue, someone at Vogue UK saw the shoot and loved it and asked me to commission me to do a beauty story for Vogue. The next thing I know, I'm being flown to India and I'm shooting the first 3 issues of Indian Vogue, which was a dream. I mean, a complete dream. And that kind of set me up for the beauty world, really, because I've really fell in love with it. I was like, okay, well, I don't need those massive teams of people. I just need the really excellent makeup artist and hairdresser. And this is enough for me. This was great. And also I like working in small teams, so that suits me just fine. It just, it just works for me. So this is all how I started really working in the beauty world, and then kind of grew from there really. You know, got an agent, got more and more commissions, and started working mainly, at first it was mainly editorially. At the time there was still a lot of magazines, and it was still really nice to be published. You know, there was loads and loads of magazine, and the beauty world was very still very new to a lot of magazine as well. You know, we used to having loads of fashion story, but beauty story was kind of starting. People starting to pay more attention to the fact that women were buying makeup. And that was actually a really good selling point for a magazine. But that's how it all started. And then from there, you know, advertising started knocking at the door. And that's when really things started to be very interesting. So yeah, the path of my career is not something that was meant to be. You know, I don't come from a background where being an artist was ever on the cards. You know, just normal, humble French background where you had to get a proper job and you had to build a career and have the 2.4 children and build a house. And so working in this industry was definitely not something that was meant to be. But yeah, here I am 25 years later and I'm still working. So I think I've done something right, I guess.
So you start your career in the, I guess like around the 2000s then?
Yeah, so I arrived in London in 94. Worked as a waitress for 2-3 years. And then, yeah, so by 2006, 7, I was starting to really do my thing, really. Yeah.
So you actually experienced a few years before the financial crash, like when advertising was more mad than it is. I mean, it is still a bit mad, I would say, but not that mad anymore. But before it was really.
Well, I've experienced that, but I've also experienced before we were shooting digital. You know, when I was an assistant, we were shooting films. So when we transitioned from film to digital, this was a major thing for a lot of photographers because it was a brand new world. Everyone was very much experimenting. You know, there was no telling the client, oh, don't worry, I've got it on film. And then you go to the lab and you're praying that you've got it on film, but you don't know. You're relying on Polaroids, you know, the old ways of shooting. So this was a major turn for everyone. And I think because at the time I was an assistant, it was the perfect time to learn because the transition for me was not financially costly because it wasn't my equipment. So I didn't have to invest into digital straight away. And then the financial crisis hit everyone. But I think for some reason, the fashion industry was not affected so much at the time. I think it got affected more now with the pandemic because people stopped spending. But I think during the first crisis, it was very different. Women still spend money. They just spend money differently. So the beauty industry, for example, you know, you just spend your money differently. So instead of buying very expensive product, you will still spend but a little less. But I'm just going to take you now to a little PDF that I've prepared. So I'm hoping you can see it. Olga, can you see it?
Not yet. So you need to share first.
Yeah, I thought I did. There you go.
Perfect.
Have you got it?
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Super.
So I've just put together a few images of things that I find current and quite representative of my work at the moment. So often people think of beauty as a very simple thing, you know, it's just shooting a beautiful girl, but there's a lot of trick to it. And I try to not retouch my work too much. So I try to get it on camera, which involved very, very tricky lighting sometimes because no one is perfect. Everyone has their imperfection, even models. So this is kind of what I built my career around. The fact that as a female, I got tired of seeing imagery where I didn't recognize myself. I didn't see the skin as, it was too polished for me. It's not real skin. And this is where I started doing things where less retouching, you can still see the pore, but the makeup and the quality of the makeup is there. And that is totally down to the amazing people I'm working with, hair and makeup artists, and also the lighting. And I think it's quite important for me to have done that in my career, to step away from the overly retouched imagery, because I don't relate to it myself. And I didn't want to sell something that I don't believe in, really. So this is kind of like a little mix of work that I've done recently. Same again, so this is a mix. So I just wanted to show you that, close-ups, and sometimes I just wanted to show you also that sometimes you get inspired by the most bizarre things on a shoot. The shot on the bottom right corner with the very long blue earrings. So we didn't know which jewelry we're going to get on that day. That was for an editorial. Basically, they're floor jewelry, which means that they're one-off. So the jewelers send pieces, but you don't really know what they send up until they arrive with a bodyguard. So when they arrive, the idea that we had on the shoot just kind of flipped on its head because it didn't work with the colors of the stuff we received. So we decided to paint the girl. And it turned out beautifully, I think. And that was literally just a spur of the moment with the makeup artist. Like, oh, how can we make this more interesting? And that shot for me is kind of iconic in my catalog of work, because I just think it's the simplicity of it, as an advertisers, this is going straight to the product. And I think that worked beautifully, even though it really wasn't planned. And then things, I had flowers in my studio, and decided to use a flower as a bit of a sexual connotation. But I just love that shot. So here we go. And then same again, I do lots of jewelry. I think jewelry is very much part of the beauty industry. So sometimes you just get loads of pieces and you're like, oh, how can I shoot all of this in one go? And then I just kind of let my stylist go free and just pile things on. Sorry, Olga, you okay? You're walking around.
Yeah. To get a better
reception. So same again, those shoots were kind of like, they just happened. It wasn't meant to be. This is not how we talked about it. And then it turned out, I think, quite lovely. I really like them. And this is one of my last personal project. I was doing an editorial with this beautiful, beautiful girl, and we finished quite early. It was a very simple makeup story with different color lipstick and whatnot. And on the back of it, I was like, she's just too beautiful. We can't just let her go. It's too early. I don't want her to go. So makeup artist just grabbed a brush and she was like, just let me do stuff. And this is the result, which I think is heavenly. No artifice. There's hardly any retouching on those, pretty much as I shot them. Just gorgeous, gorgeous girls. And sometimes, the pieces that you'll find making their way into your portfolio are the one that you just didn't expect shooting, which I think it's just so much more fun.
Can I ask about and I'm sure it's a trade secret, so don't get this wrong, but when we talk about lighting, could you give us, let's say, our student, like one top tip, for example, in terms of like lighting?
I think lighting is it's very personal thing. What I love might not be what my colleague beauty photographers love. It is very subjective. Start simple and build up will be my advice. Don't feel like you need a million lights to make this happen. Sometimes the most beautiful light, like the one before those, I've got 2 lights. I've got 2 heads. And that's it. So sometimes, I'll see people, sometimes arriving in the studio with loads of boxes of, Profoto and this and that, and umbrellas and beauty dish and kinos and this. And I'm like, okay, if it works for you, it works for you. My world is all about simplicity. And yeah, I just think don't overcomplicate things. I think sometimes the most beautiful light is the simplest one. That would be my advice. But it is very depending on what you want to achieve. obviously. Sometimes I do advertising campaign and you need to have reflection, you need to have shadows, so obviously that would require more equipment, more lighting. But for something like this, those images on the screen, there's 2 lights and that's it. Simple. This one, for example, same. I think on that one, if I remember right, when I shot Stephanie, it was 1 light. And I just wanted a lot of power because we were playing with the hair. The original shot was all about movement, so we wanted the hair to kind of flow around her. So there was 1 big head, huge octa, if I remember right. And that is Stephanie. Stephanie is 78 years old. She would kill me for saying so. We met on an editorial shoot for Boots. And I totally fell in love with her. She used to shoot in the 60s for Vogue. She was a really, really big model. She was doing Vogue, Marie Claire, Elle. Incredibly ageless woman. So what I mean by ageless is she has that thing that I guess model used to have in the 60s and the 50s, where every position she has is graceful. Everything about her is graceful. And she's incredible to shoot. Like on that picture, she doesn't do anything. She just shuts her eyes. And because the wind was actually blowing in her face. But I just think one incredible face and her skin and everything. I just totally fell in love with her. And we are very good friends now. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to count her in my portfolio and as a friend. So this is a bit of advertising. I just did some random imagery. So as you can see, even when I do fashion shoots, they are very much in the same kind of wavelengths as my beauty work. So I tend to have a very simple light, but still very effective on the skin. It's not flat. You still have shadows. It's all about how you position it. For the LK Bennett, they wanted a nice edge on the skin. So for that, same again, my lighting is very simple, but then there's so many things you can play with. Polyboards. Never underestimate the use of a polyboard. You can do wonders with polyboards. The way they reflect the light or distract from the light, or deflect, sorry, is wonderful. And sometimes all you need is just moving in and out your polyboard and your lighting will be completely different. So never underestimate that. And just little tricks, the shot in the middle, the one that called Zunetta, the makeup was very iridescent and I was kind of struggling to get that kind of shine. And all I did was go into the kitchen of the studio and get a bit of foil. And I put some foil underneath the girls. And that was just enough to pick up the shine on the eye and on the lip. So be mobile. You don't have to always spend a lot of money into renting the best equipment or buying the latest gear. It's not what it's about. It's about being creative and just kind of do with what you've got around, because that's kind of, it's very nerdy, but it's so much fun as well. So yeah, that's my trick, I guess, for equipment. I just wanted to run you through something else now. So I'm very lucky that my work let me have not only time, but also financial ability to do other projects, which has been very close to my heart for a few years. So I worked on a project called the Skin We're In project, where I was contacted by an agency called CBD Models. They represent models with disability. And when I say disability, it's the wrong term, disability, really. It is people that are, up until a couple of years ago, were classified as out of the norm. So it's people with skin condition, with physical disability, with mental disability. And the girls at ZBD are fantastic. And they started repping those people because they felt like the world needed to see them. And the world needed to show that not everyone is a size 8 and perfect skin and body shape. So I started working with them. And then one day we organized this shoot. And I didn't really know who was going to come. But we knew we wanted to do people that had physical disability. And so I started shooting people that had amputation or were born with limb difference. And I wanted that to be simple. I wanted it to be about them. So I asked everyone to come and be in your underwear, no artifice, no retouching. That was very important for me. The only thing I retouched, I did a color balance and I retouched the marking on the floor, but there's no retouching on any of them physical appearance. So I shot them all, and I'm someone that likes to build up a relationship with my models. So I got to talk to all of them. And luckily, I've got a very good memory. And I started, the day after, I started writing all their stories. And then out of this came a book with some of their stories. And out of this came an exhibition. And all of them have the most incredible story. Andrew, for example, the guy with all the tattoo, he is the male world champion. Sorry, the word just evaded me. Pole dancers. And you wouldn't expect that. So Andrew is a hairdresser doing his job, coming from work, and he fell off his bike. Really badly injured his ankle. Goes to hospital, had surgery, cast for a few months, and within the next year, his ankle is still bothering him. He's constantly in pain. He can't put any weight on his ankle. He has more surgery. And then he decided, just I've had enough now. I've had loads of surgery. I'm done with this. Was the option. So the option was to have an amputation. So he went for it. And that's never held him back. He decided that life was better lived without half of his leg than being in constant pain. And some of you might recognize him. Last week, he was at the Jubilee pageant in the street of London, hanging from a balloon, doing some aerobatic. So good on him. He's really turned around his life, and he's wonderful. We're very good friends still. This is more people that I've shot for the exhibition. You've got Mark, which is a double amputee. So Mark's story is fascinating as well. Mark was in the army for a good 30 years, retired, been to Africa, been in loads of places, full combat, never been injured, never had anything. Retired, decided to open a little second-hand shop, selling furniture and things like this. And then something happened. A French wardrobe fell onto him. He got trapped under the wardrobe. Had 3 heart attacks, so he's open all the way down to his chest, and had to have a double amputation of his legs. And that's the most amazing thing. You think the guy's just spent 30 years of his career in the army, never had a thing, and then decided to retire, and the worst thing happened. And he's lovely. He's full of joy, and he's full of happiness. So this exhibition for me was very much about showing that beauty can be very different, and beauty can really be everywhere. And it goes in the same line of thinking that we shouldn't over-retouch and we shouldn't over-made up people, because beauty can be as simple as just a little girl sitting on a box and looking back at the camera. To me, she's the epitome of strength and beauty. And I just really wanted to show that. So the exhibition took place in London just before the pandemic. Then it was in France, and then it was going to go to Berlin and New York, but then we got hit by a pandemic. But it'll be showing in December in Paris at the UNESCO building, if some of you are going to Paris. So I'm very excited about that. And then in the same train of thought, and to keep on with the beauty world, I decided to do Same Girl with the girl from the CBD Agency, a whole series on people with different skin tones. And that took me to people having albinism, or loads of different skin condition. And I love that series because, same again, very simple light. I desaturated a lot of the pictures because I wanted to be about them as well. And I love the softness. There's something very delicate about this. And those people would, in different culture would get killed or be completely ostracized. And I just really wanted to show them, to show the world that it's the insanity of it. Just because of your skin color and your skin tones, you can be cast aside. To me, makes no sense. And I think the beauty world has done the same things for many years. You wouldn't see someone with albinism in a campaign. The guy on the top right corner just shot a Burberry campaign now. So, the industry is coming to terms with the fact that you can be different and you can still sell product, because ultimately this is what it is. It's about selling a product. And for a very long time, those people were pushed aside and cast aside, but those are also consumers. So I think it's very important. And for me, it is to introduce them to my advertising world.
Can I ask you something? Elise, I think this is a very courageous 2 projects, in fact. And I only have very, very little experience myself shooting fashion, but my experience so far was that that fashion is very, very particular in terms of the norms that people would expect, for example, from in terms of how a model actually looks like, and what is in, and what's in vogue and what is not on vogue. And that they definitely do embrace, for example, if someone is very, very different, let's say people with skin conditions, etc. So once you really made, let's say, a strong statement a strong fashion statement in the other direction or the opposite direction, that kind of maybe goes away, let's say, from current, let's say, trends in terms of how really high fashion, very successful models on really top level, how they're supposed to look like. But I've got the feeling sometimes those everyday levels, in between, basically, they sometimes.
Sorry, this is my cat. I'm so sorry.
No worries, hi cat. Sometimes I've got the feeling the fashion world is actually kind of slightly struggling with that.
Yeah,
because it's neither this nor that. No? How did you experience it? Did you ever feel you hit the wall with your projects?
Yeah, I think it's a strange one, because and it's happening now with the Me Too movement as well. The Me Too movement and the having colored people in advertising for a long time, very, very a big no-no. Now we're eating the other side of it, where advertisers it's like a token. So they are booking certain models because they feel they have to. We have to have a kid with a disability. We have to have a Black woman. We have to have a girl with a skin condition. So it's a fine line. I wish we didn't have to go through this. And I think with time, it will be a normal thing. But now we're hitting the other side, where people feel they have to do it to be compliant with what's correct. So it is a shame. I mean, it is a step forward to have those people on my shoots. It's great to be able to book them, and it's great to have them including in the casting. But I still feel it's a shame that they are still a token rather than a full-on part of it. If you see what I mean. It's a very fine line. Very often I'm looking at campaigners like, oh, here's the token Black girl. Oh, here's the token Asian girl. Oh, here's the token kid with a disability, or here's the woman on a wheelchair. And it feels a little bit too made up.
Yeah, but if you think about it, isn't that almost like the essence of fashion? Like the special model, the extraordinary, something that is not just like the ordinary, basically. So it almost seems to be part of the DNA of fashion. And really, thank God, that this has actually kind of opened up into this completely new world. But yeah, I think the way you described this as the token, that really hits the nail on the head. I think it just becomes another thing, basically. Yeah. But I guess. But
I think things are changing. I think it is becoming more accepted and acceptable to have a plus size girl. The one thing also in my career that I've done is I've never dismissed a girl because of her sizing. And I think advertisers are finally understanding that the average size for a woman, I'm talking about women more than men because that's more my world, is not a size 8. you know, and the size 16 and the 14 are a massive part of the economy. The fashion world is coming to term with it, but it's still very much also a token. We're still not quite there. It is coming, but it's still not quite 100%. We still have section in model agency for plus size. Why are they separated? You know, why are they in a different category? You know, why is the girls I work with at CBD felt that they had to create an agency specifically for people with disability? Why not have an agency that does everything? You know, it is coming, but it's a slow process. And I think it's the same process as when you were looking at fashion shows in the 90s and the 2000s, where every single model was a size 6, even though they were 1.80 meters. It was physically impossible for them to maintain that sizing. And yet the girls were super skinny. So now we're starting to see normal girls on the catwalk. And that's wonderful. So it is changing. It's just, you know, the fashion industry is always been fickle, and that's just the way it is. Well, you know, it just takes a bit longer.
Do you think that could be, or part of it could be, the influence of social media and influencers?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I think the reason why I didn't fall into shooting a lot of campaigns, I've turned down campaigns because I didn't agree with the ethos of the campaign, mostly because it was overly made up. You didn't even see the skin. There was so much makeup. I've done one campaign like this, and I felt really out of place. And I promised myself never to do that again. So yeah, the influencers have a massive part to play in this. You know, I feel like when I'm looking at TikTok and things, you know, I've seen all those girls wearing tons and tons and tons of makeup and doing all those Q&A on how to apply 5 layers of foundation and this and that. And I'm just like, that is so much work. That is such hard work. And sadly, you know, I've got friends with teenagers, and that's what they're aspiring to be, you know. So yeah, but it's a different era. You know, I'm talking like an old woman now, but it's just a different approach to things, I guess. I just don't really relate to it because I'm an old woman.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously things do change. I mean, I guess like in both directions, like obviously like social media and the digital revolution has opened up the market, like the photography world, really, to so many incredibly talented young talents, really. Like, you know, back in the days, like all my background is film photography. And, you know, back in the days, you know, if you want to become a professional photographer, you bought yourself a Mamiya or a Hasselblad for 15 or 20K, like an entire system. And that made you a professional photographer, you know what I mean? And, you know, a lot of people seem to be whining about those good old days. But if you kind of look back at the standard of work, it's just not that great, to be honest. I mean, nowadays you've got so much more stuff is coming in, so much more ideas are being shared. So
yeah, and also, you know, technology. I mean, I see people doing stuff on their phone, and it's beautiful. It's magical. And I you know, I always looked at equipment as a tool. It's just a tool. You know, ultimately, if you want to take a good picture, it's not about the equipment. It's about how you see the world and how you want to portray the world. You know, as I said, I use very simple lighting, but I focus on my subject. My image is purely down. If it's a good image, it's hardly got anything to do with me. It's purely because of my subject and the people I'm working with. So times are changing. I think, you know, you're right. When I first bought my first camera, is a Mamiya 645, you know, shooting on 120, still films. And I was like, oh my God, this is so much money, but it's amazing. And I remember buying it secondhand because I couldn't afford it new. But it is just a tool. You know, I've been having the same, I shoot with Canon, and I don't upgrade my equipment very often because I believe that's a lifestyle that you don't need to change things until they break. So I've been using the same camera for years, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I still shoot campaign, and I still get my clients are very happy still. So, you know, I think social media, it's a pro and a con. You know, the con is we have opened the gate to a lot of really rubbish things, but we've also opened the gate to some fantastic things, and giving the opportunity to people that can't afford big piece of equipment to still take wonderful pictures. And that's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. I love watching new photographers, and I have no issue with people calling themselves a photographer if they just use a phone. I don't care. I think it's not about that. It's not about the stuff you use. It's the eyes you project on the world, which I think is just brilliant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've got some time, everybody, for some Q&As, if you like. I could see there's a few more people who have joined with stream. Julia Fulton-Batten, fantastic. Nice to see you. We once met at one of your talks, in fact. Good, so it's a good opportunity for you guys to ask any questions if you like. So we definitely have another 5 minutes if you like. I would like to start with one question. Do you still shoot film? You know, particularly like in fashion, film, you know, it's a really, really big thing. Is that a thing of the past for you?
Yeah, for me it is. It's too complicated now. I couldn't shoot it on advertising because we just don't have the time and the resources. It's very expensive now to shoot film, you know. And yeah, you just get used to your thing, you know. Shooting digital totally makes sense to me now. I mean, I still got a couple of film camera, and I still got some film. I've got loads of Polaroids still left, but I use them for my own fun. Yeah.
I've got another question for you, if you don't mind. It's about, do you work with casting agents to find the right models, or have you got enough contacts with the model agencies directly?
So I'm pretty hands-on. When I do my casting, I tend to do them myself because I have a relationship with the bookers. And I find that it's just sometimes easier. It just depends on the job. You know, if it's a massive advertising campaign, obviously, I would tend to go to a casting agent. I work with a couple that are fantastic. But it's all down to cost, you know. It's all down to that. You know, if the client said, oh, we organize the casting, then that's out of your hands. If they want me to organize the casting, I tend to do it. It's just on budget. It's just down to budget. But I do have a really good relationship with quite a few bookers. So I just need to drop them an email, and then they send me selection, and then I just narrow it down, and then I get to see the girl, physically see the girls, and then decide with clients what's the best you shoot.
And do you still test?
Yes, all the time. All the time. I love it. This is, you know, the world of advertising is wonderful, but it is a job. It is selling a product. And even though I'm feeling really blessed to be doing this, which is amazing. I mean, how can you not feel amazed by getting paid to take pictures? It's just incredible. But testing is still wonderful. You know, I still send stuff to magazine, and I still do stuff for myself. And also just to have a bit of fun with your team, you know, you makeup and hair, and you throw ideas at each other, and you just, you know, you do mood boards and you send them, and you just like, what do you think of that? She goes, oh, I love this, but let's do it like this, and let's do it like that. And it's just, yeah, you need that. You need to still be creative. Otherwise, you just, yeah. Creativity is, you know, is the key. I mean, you know, I might be a commercial photographer, but I'm hoping I'm still an artist. So yeah, testing is very important. And for your own growth, you know, you try different things all the time.
What's around the corner for you? Do you have any big projects coming up?
Well, I've just been shooting in the past 3 weeks. I've been pretty intense. So I've just done a shoot in the south of France for the Discovery Channel for a new TV show coming out. So I'm waiting for the edit from the client on this, and I've just in the middle of retouching a big campaign, which I can't tell you much about, but I'm currently in the process of retouching this. So it's back and forth with the client. I've actually got a meeting after this with them. And yeah, still, you know, hoping the big jobs are coming in. My agent just sent a couple of quotes to some advertising jobs. So fingers crossed they're going to come through, and just doing my thing as well on the side. You know, I've got the exhibition in Paris in December, which is a bit tech because that's the UNESCO building. So there's a lot of decision to be made as to how we're going to do the layout and printing and everything. And it's in Paris. So it's my hometown. So I just want to make sure that I do a good job because mom and dad are going to be there. So I have to do a good job. And just, you know, yeah, just ticking along, really, just doing my thing.
Yeah, we've got a question from Elizabeth. She asks, in the early days of your career, did you enter any competitions to get more exposure? What's your view of photography competitions generally?
Mixed emotion about competition. I've entered a few over the years. Yeah, very mixed emotion about competition. I think some competition some competition organizer are purely doing it for the money. I think, you know, I get emails pretty much every week on things from all around the world. Oh, enter competition. This month is about beauty. This month is about fashion. This month is about street photography. This month is about the entering fee is sometimes insane. I've seen competition where it was like 250 euros to enter for one image. And that always rings alarm bells to me, as in, you know, I get an email out of the blue and you want me to enter this competition. I don't know you, and you want 250 quid. I think that's just insane. But I have entered some big one, you know, National Portrait and all of this. Sadly, I've never won, but I've won a few as well. So, you know, it's a mixed one. I think I understand why certain competition need to charge for it. I think it should be a token rather than it stops people from joining the fun, I feel sometimes. You know, £25 to enter a competition, I think is perfectly okay, because there's some admin to be sorted. There's some website needs to be looked after. There's people that need to go through, you know, looking through everything. So, and that I understand. That doesn't bother me. When it goes over that, I think there's a bit of a con. Yeah. Really, I've won a couple, so, you know.
Yeah. Do you remember when? What was the name again? It's this design magazine. What's the name again? They basically really start to create those photography. What's the name again? It's a really famous London-based Creative Review, exactly. And do you remember, like, when they had the photography competition, but in the end, it was the photography issue that they released. So it's almost basically as if you are paying them to have the chance to be in their magazine, because in the end, in the magazine, they sold the magazine. Yeah. They might have been maybe some advertising in there.
Exactly, and this is where my issue lies. It's like, where, you know, I think entering competition is good, but you really need to be selective, and you really need to look as to what's going to happen with it. And also, a lot of the competition, they make you, you know, you don't realize, but you're waiving your rights, your copyrights. So then they can use those pictures for anything, i.e. making a book and making money. So yeah, winning a competition, and I'm sure, I think Julia, you say, is on the talk, and she's won numerous competitions because she's insanely talented. I'm very jealous. I think competitions are good, and in the essence, I think they're brilliant because you get to see a lot of different people coming in, and I think that's brilliant. The price of the competition, I think, needs to be reviewed, and you need to be really careful as to entering everything and anything is not going to bring your career to a different level. I don't think entering the right one, the one that are being seen by the right people, is what's important. And Creative Review was a funny one because everyone knows Creative Review, and I've been featuring them, and I actually really enjoyed it. But then, yes, you're right. You paid for your page. You paid for an entry.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for the wonderful talk.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Okay. Enjoy the lovely weather, everyone. Cheers.
Being in my garden. Bye.
Cheers.